Colorado Speaker of the House Crisanta Duran and State Senate President Kevin Grantham announced the transportation funding bill this week that will ask for $3.5 billion from taxpayers to pay for highway improvements. The bill is already running into significant criticism from conservatives, including the highest-ranking Republican in the state House. David, very simply, is this thing dead on arrival?
Yes, and I think, as a lot of the reporting has said, President Grantham didn't get much, if any, buy-in from the Republican caucus, and there's going to be a lot of opposition, as there should. First of all, there's no fiscal restraint in this bill. Before raising taxes, we ought to be first cutting some spending, particularly on Colorado's notorious welfare recipients, like Quentin Tarantino, who got over $4 million to film a movie, The Hateful Eight, that was filmed in Colorado on Colorado welfare, and yet is set in Wyoming.
But David, that $4 million is going to buy like a couple lane stripes on I-25.
That's just a starting point. Then we've got the welfare for people who buy luxury electric cars, and then there's really, when you add it all up, the hundreds of millions of dollars that the legislature spends on corporate welfare altogether in its many, many phases. Secondly, US 36, the great successful project there, shows there's lots of roads where we can add capacity without any taxes on the general public. You do it through adding high occupancy toll and high occupancy vehicle lanes, and so the highway users pay for it, and that's the right way to do it. The people who want a better highway, they pay for it directly, they get a better highway. That could be done in lots of places. Third, of all this huge money that's going to be raised, only about half of it goes to the state Colorado Department of Transportation for other highway construction. A whole bunch of the rest goes to cities and counties. Well, cities and counties, they know their own transportation needs best. They can ask their voters for whatever tax increases they want within the city and county for those particular roads, and that would be much better focused, because then the voters could say, oh, if taxes go up this much, this particular road is going to get fixed or expanded or whatever. And a lot of the rest goes to a new state bureaucracy, which has to spend at least 25% of its money not on improving roads, but on things like for pedestrians and for people in wheelchairs, which is certainly an important thing to do. But we ought to have a state government that can build sidewalks and paths out of current revenue rather than borrowing for 20 years to build things like that.
Eric, if Republicans, whether it's in the, imagine the Senate, where they hold some sway, do end up killing this bill on arrival, or wherever it's going to be in the process, can Democrats later use their own obstinance against them, saying, hey, we tried to fix transportation, which I think across the board Coloradans are concerned about? Is that a risky maneuver by Republicans?
Oh, it's risky all around, and yes, there can be political recrimination, but I think that's for another day down the road. I'm going to disagree with David. This thing is not DOA. It might be in jeopardy. It may have some serious, I don't think it's even on life support. It may have some serious issues, but it is not DOA for a simple reason. You have the Senate president, a Republican, in an 1817 Senate. You have Republican Senate sponsors of this. Obviously, this bill will start in the House, which is easier sailing Democratic House. And the House needs to be careful not to Christmas tree it up with a lot of stuff that is attractive to Democratic constituencies, too much bike lanes and transit and whatever to make it more attractive to folks in Boulder and Denver and whatever, because that makes it easier for the Senate to kill it. But if the Duran and Grantham compromise can maintain some integrity, it then has a chance in the Senate, because there are enough Senate Republicans combined who could vote for it, combined with the lion's share, if not the entirety, of the Democratic caucus in the Senate. There are two huge obstacles here. One is getting it through this legislative sausage-making process, as I've discussed. Secondly is then getting it past the voters come November. Voters, there can't be any argument that the state has huge transportation and road needs, but there probably isn't a whole lot of argument either that the state had some significant education needs. And last time we went with Amendment 66, we saw that got a solid 1/3 or slightly over 1/3 of the vote. Republicans, I mean, you have to harken back to Referendum C in 2005, long time ago now, passed narrowly. You had a Republican governor in his final year doing a courageous thing and endorsing this. It is hard to find high-profile Republicans with ambitions who are going to tackle that anti-tax, the strident anti-tax people in that party and embrace something like this. So I think it has challenges in the legislature, but perhaps even bigger challenges come November.
Ben, I think we talked about transportation as an issue is important across the board, Republican, Democrat, wherever you're at politically in Colorado, but tax hikes are not. Is there a way to sell this thing that can garner some more public support that might actually put some external pressure on some Republicans who would otherwise be completely against any sort of tax hike?
Well, I think there are, and I think you don't have to look too much further than daily newspapers and community newspapers that gripe about traffic issues. Traffic is a huge concern for residents all around the metro area. There are significant road projects underway also all around the metro area, and you actually have some key members of the Republican caucus in both the House and the Senate, frankly, screaming bloody murder about the condition of I-25 in particular and the ability to move up and down the Front Range. So I think that there already is a lot of public pressure to address traffic and congestion and the condition of roads. So I think to that degree, a lot of Republican legislators might find more of a perch for this issue than you might typically expect. I think a lot of folks in Colorado understand how fast we're growing, and all of us sit on the road and all of us see rush hour traffic. So I don't think that the typical way that these tax issues line up will necessarily come into play here. I think that it will be critical for Republican legislators to really make that drumbeat loud so that they have a strong constituent presence saying we need to do something about this problem. So I think there should be more cover here than maybe you would find for education or healthcare or other issues.
Patty, I don't remember all the funny mechanisms with the T-Rex project, but I remember that just being a monster and aptly named, but it turned out pretty darn well. Do you think there's a potential to bring back some of that success, possibly for something like this?
It's possible. I mean, Ben's right. There is nothing that gets people more irate in Colorado. Native versus newcomer, I would say, is number one. Number two is absolutely traffic, but not just traffic. It's the state of the roads you're stuck on, and you have so much time to look and see how bad they are. The potholes, the lack of curbs, they're just a mess. So I think there is some public will to, for the right measure, they might go for it. This is way too overreaching right now. It makes you kind of think of the health care bill going through in Congress, just too vague, too much. But I think if the legislators really dial down, focus in, it's possible that we'd get something through this year.